I was bullied for being blind, so to survive, I cozied up to Johnny. The moment he laughed while crushing someone's finger bone, I jumped and hugged him tight. Bro, dinner's ready. Why aren't you home yet? Since then, everyone said I was Johnny's blind lapdog. He'd protect me, treat me well, but he'd never truly care. Until the day Johnny got engaged to the person who bullied me, I vanished. Johnny went nuts. He searched the whole city for me. I'm a blind girl, but not completely. My mom found top doctors and got my eyes fixed when I was 7, but she kept warning me over and over. I couldn't let anyone know I could see, even if she wouldn't say why. Her serious tone told me it was a big deal. From then on, no matter where I was, I'd pretend to be blind. After 7 years of truly being blind, faking it came naturally. No one ever doubted me. People were considerate of my disability. They treated me kindly. But after getting into the city's top elite high school, everything changed. I was just sitting quietly at my desk studying, but still, someone with pure malice shoved my head into the wall. If I walked into the bathroom, they'd lock me inside and laugh. I didn't know what I'd done wrong, and I was too scared to ask for help. I didn't have a dad. Mom worked hard alone, leaving before dawn and coming home late, bowing to her superiors just to keep her job. No matter what, I couldn't drag Mom into this. I had to save myself. So, I picked someone, whether at school or on the streets. Johnny was someone no one dared mess with. As long as I stuck with him, no one else would dare lay a hand on me. After getting beaten up once again, I limped behind Johnny. He took a bunch of turns into an alley, and soon the sound of fighting and screams poured out. I quietly peeked in. Johnny was tossing 7 or 8 thugs to the ground in the alley. His expression was dark and casual, with a hint of impatience. I shrank back in fear, but forced myself to keep watching. After Johnny dealt with the last one, he lit a cigarette, crushing it into one guy's fingers. The sound of bones breaking followed. Johnny chuckled. Such weak moves, and you dare act tough with me. My heart raced. At this point, there was no turning back. Just as Johnny was about to turn around, I bit down, rushing up to hug him. Johnny froze, and his cigarette fell to the ground. I tried hard to steady my voice, pretending to sound cheerful. Dinner's ready. Why aren't you home yet? Johnny paused, relaxing his body. He turned, cupping my face, his fingers brushing over my eyes' edges. I let my eyes go blank, keeping up the blind act. Where'd this blind girl come from? His voice was deep and cold, carrying a dangerous vibe. I clenched my fists nervously, but only flashed a naive smile. It's time for dinner. If you wait, the food's gonna get cold. Johnny's gaze moved from my empty eyes to my collar, then to my arm. On my neck was a long scar, cut by Lucy with a knife, not deep enough to kill. My arm was covered in bruises, from Lucy's gang tripping me to the ground. Painful, but not deadly. I controlled my breathing, not letting Johnny catch on. I could do this. I inherited my mom's full beauty, and I had scars on my skin. Few could resist a beautiful, blind girl covered in wounds. I had little to offer, but whatever Johnny wanted, I could give. If no one helped, I'd end up dead at Lucy's hands. But I wanted to live. I didn't want to die. Finally, Johnny looked away. Only then did I realize I could breathe again. Johnny raised an eyebrow, sounding intrigued. We're not eating that. I'm taking you for something better. Where was he taking me? What was he going to do? I could barely stop myself from shaking. I'd already made my choice, and there was no backing out now. Johnny scoffed. Why are you shivering? I bit my tongue, forcing a smile. Nothing, just a bit chilly. I'll go wherever you do. The night wind rushed through the alley. I was in my thin school uniform, covered in cold sweat. It was chilly. Johnny eyed me thoughtfully, then actually draped his jacket over me. His jacket was still warm, carrying his scent. I gripped the hem, unsure how to react. Mom was always busy. It had been a long time since I felt cared for. I hesitated, and Johnny took my hand, leading me forward. The direction wasn't home for either of us. I bit my lip, walking silently. After a few minutes, we arrived at a bustling night market. Johnny squeezed my fingers and handed me a box of skewers. Eat up. Johnny leaned against the wall, watching me leisurely. His words dragged with ambiguous warmth, like he knew my intentions. A makeshift excuse, and he saw right through it. But as long as he was willing to play, that was enough. I fumbled for a skewer, offering it towards Johnny's voice. You first. Johnny gave me a deep look before bending to bite the skewer. It was rare for Johnny to bow his head like this just to grab a skewer. I tried hard to hold back, but I couldn't help a faint smile. The warm skewers brushed away autumn's chill, The thick jacket dulled the pain of my wounds. I'd never had a brother, but now it felt like I did. However, the brief warmth was quickly shattered. Just as I grabbed a piece of radish, someone shoved me hard. No time to react. I stumbled forward. Just as I was about to fall, Johnny caught me. Yet, as soon as I steadied, Johnny stepped back. From behind, Lucy's voice sneered, "This little blind girl learned to cozy up, huh?" I pressed my lips together, staying silent. The boiling hot broth spilled all over the place, and Johnny's jacket slipped to the ground, getting all dirty. The little warmth I had vanished instantly. I bent down to pick up Johnny's jacket, speaking softly, "I'm heading out." But as soon as I took a step, Lucy grabbed my wrist, pulling me back. "Where you running off to? People might think I'm bullying you." Her nails were beautifully done, but they dug into my skin painfully. I tried to pull away, then just gave in, waiting quietly for Lucy's torment. She lifted up my chin, exaggerating her words. "Our little blind cutie is quite pretty. No wonder you're cozying up to Johnny." Laughter erupted behind her. I hung my head in shame, unable to say a word. Lucy, clearly bored, shoved me. "Why aren't you talking? You're blind, not mute." "No, I'm not," I mumbled feebly, only to get laughed at even harder. Then I heard a cold voice break in. "That's enough." I looked up, dazed, at Johnny. Annoyance and a touch of anger flickered in his eyes. Lucy raised an eyebrow, stepped closer, and grabbed Johnny's collar, whispering something to him. I couldn't catch the last few words, but saw Johnny clench his fists, then let them fall, defeated. He looked down, clearly frustrated and gloomy, like he was struggling, but stuck. I tugged at Johnny's sleeve and smiled. "I'm okay. I'll clean your jacket." Johnny blinked lightly. A bit of the darkness faded from his face. He brushed Lucy's hand away, and turned to squeeze my fingers gently before letting go. I felt him slip a card into my hand. I paused but didn't make a sound. Johnny nudged me in another direction. I followed his lead. This time, I walked for a while without anyone stopping me. I walked all the way home and opened my hand. It was a bank card. At the same time, a text from an unknown number came through. A voice read out the 6-digit number from the message. I stared at the card for a bit, then headed to the bank. The balance had so many zeros. I couldn't even wrap my head around the amount. I stood there by the ATM for a long time, thinking uncontrollably that if I weren't stuck in this mess and had a choice, I would have returned the card to Johnny, saying I didn't need it. But I couldn't. So all that thinking was just a sad attempt at preserving dignity. I withdrew 20 grand and headed home. The food was a bit cold. I warmed it up, cleaned Johnny's jacket, and threw on one of my own to hide the bruises. I finished my homework alone at the dining table, and finally around 10, I heard the door unlock. Mom came in, looking exhausted. I lowered my head and handed her the money. "Where's this from?" she gently but firmly asked. While scarfing down my food, I avoided her eyes. "Scholarship, from school." Mom looked at me for a long time, before putting the money away. "Jenny, high school is tough, isn't it? Just stay safe for Mom." My eyes got misty, and I nodded, burying my head in my food. The next day, I nervously walked into the classroom. Lucy sat in the back, loudly chatting about designer bags with her friends, not noticing me. I breathed a sigh of relief and slid into my seat. The chatter behind me suddenly stopped. I tensed as footsteps approached. My body trembled. I clenched my jaw, trying not to think about the next rough encounter. Then, a soft knock on my desk. I looked up to see Johnny give a little smirk, a bit mischievous. He placed a paper bag on my desk. "For you." Without another word, Johnny turned and left, heading to the next classroom. It was still early, and there weren't many students around, but everyone's eyes were on me. I bit my lip and opened the bag. Inside was an egg, a sandwich, and a carton of milk. The students' expressions changed. Whispers reached my ears. "Johnny brought Jenny breakfast." Seriously, when did they get to know each other? Not just that, Jenny may be blind, but she's pretty. Makes sense if Johnny wants a taste. But aren't Lucy and Johnny close? Isn't this awkward for Lucy? The footsteps behind me stopped when Johnny showed up. Even with the noisy classroom, I clearly heard Lucy storm off in anger. I thought, maybe I can have some peace for a while. I peeled the egg and ate it slowly. Johnny didn't know I was slightly allergic to eggs, that they made my stomach hurt. But it was fine, because he didn't know. I've had so little love in my life. So even if that love came mixed with pity or hurt, it didn't matter. As long as it was love, I'd gratefully swallow it down. By the third class, my stomach was cramping painfully. I was drenched in cold sweat, and couldn't focus on a single word. Finally, it was break time. I leaned against the wall, exhausted, heading to the bathroom to splash some water on my face. But in the next moment, someone pushed me into the sink. Feeling smug now, Jenny? Lucy's voice was harsh and furious behind me. My face was shoved into the cold water. The stomach pain and weakness left me too drained to fight back. Lucy kept pushing me under. I was on the brink of drowning, and all sounds blurred together, but I could make out Lucy's yelling and the others' mocking laughs. You don't really think Johnny likes you, do you? You're just his plaything. Or why do you think he never said a harsh word to me yesterday? I couldn't tell if it was my tears, or the cold water from the sink on my face. It all felt like needles in my head. My limbs were icy, pain numbing me. I gave up struggling, letting Lucy rage on. After a while, Lucy seemed to realize something. She stopped, let go of me, and said with a hint of panic, "Dead." I shook violently, took a few deep breaths to steady myself, and then laughed. Yeah, I'm just a dog. To survive, I could give up anything. I turned around and lunged at Lucy with all my strength, knocking her to the ground. Lucy screamed. I didn't care and pinned her down, punching her face again and again, with all my might. Blood splattered. Lucy's screams and curses turned into pleas for mercy. We fought until we were both soaking wet. Whether it was Lucy's expensive dress, or my worn-out shirt, they were both dirty and ruined now. Come on, no one's saving me, so might as well share this misery with me. Lucy was finally pulled away by others. Her face was swollen and bruised, with several bloody scratches on her once well-maintained face. Before leaving, she gave me a vicious glare. Jenny, expect to get expelled. Your good days are numbered. I didn't even look at her. It didn't matter anymore. There wasn't a single clean spot left on me, with scratches all over my arms, and my hair completely soaked and dripping. I couldn't have been in a worse state, but as I stepped out the door, I ran into the person I least wanted to see. Johnny was standing at the door, looking shocked when he saw me. I walked past him, pretending not to know anything, but he stopped me. Was it Lucy? I neither nodded nor denied it, but tears welled up in my eyes anyway. I heard him sigh lightly before he embraced me. I'm sorry. Hang in there a little longer. His embrace was warm, but my heart felt cold at that moment. That's right, someone like me is just a dog. They are from wealthy families. How could he have a falling out with Lucy over a dog? But I've given everything I have. What more can I offer? What can I use to beg for even a small amount of shelter? Johnny led me out of the school gates, taking me to a rental apartment. I took a hot shower there, and my stomach pain eased a lot. I sat on the sofa sipping some porridge, while Johnny dried my hair with a towel. Everything was so peaceful. It felt like the cold and pain from a few hours ago were just a distant memory, but the silence between us wouldn't let me forget. I pressed my lips together, offering Johnny a small smile. Thanks. Johnny didn't speak for a long time. My hair was completely dry, and there were only 30 minutes left of lunch break. I should have been back at school already. Yet, Johnny remained silent, keeping his eyes down, his warm hand gently brushing over my head, perhaps to soothe or express regret. Or maybe, it was just a pet's gentle stroke. I turned my head to look into Johnny's dark eyes. There was a glimpse of pity. Whether there was any real emotion, I couldn't tell. I've never understood what kind of person Johnny is, or why he does what he does. But I never waste time guessing. Instead of guessing, I'd rather gamble. I turned, grabbed Johnny by the collar, forcing him to bend down. Caught off guard, he couldn't fend me off, and his tightly pressed lips met mine. Two reckless breaths collided, sparking in the air. Johnny froze, no longer moving. I stubbornly kissed awkwardly until those hands pushed me away unkindly. Embarrassment filled my heart in that silent moment, murdering my self-respect bit by bit. So, that's how it is. I really was fooling myself. We walked in silence. Just a few steps from the teaching building, Johnny suddenly stopped me. Jenny, just wait a little longer. It won't be long. Hang in there, all right. I instinctively touched the unhealed scratches on my arm, but my smile was still sweet. Okay, I'll wait for you. Johnny saw me back to the classroom, before he left the school again. He didn't return until study hall, with a deeper look of frustration and gloom. What can trouble a rich family's oldest son that he can't handle? Resting my chin on my hand, I observed Johnny out of the corner of my eye. I saw him look at me and suddenly smile. He's good looking, and when he smiles, all the gloom vanishes. Like the most vibrant young boy, full of life. I paused, barely keeping calm. In the next second, Johnny knocked on the window beside me, placing something in my hand. I panicked to catch it and looked down to see a sunflower. By the time I looked up, Johnny was gone. The sunflower was small, not fully grown, not eye-catching, but I liked it a lot. I found a water bottle to keep the sunflower alive. I heard plenty of sneers about blind people attempting flower arrangements, but at least no one bothered me for a few days. Johnny gave me breakfast once and a sunflower. That's enough to make the others in my class stop their bullying. Lucy seemed wary of my actions that day and laid low for a while. I think this must be my happiest time. I could relax, listen to lectures, study, do what any ordinary student would, instead of constantly guarding against the malice that threatened to take everything I had. But as each second of this happiness passed, I was on edge, as if all the peace before me was stolen. It made me anxious and restless, unable to eat or feel at ease, with the ever-present fear of my world crashing down at any second, leaving me with nothing. Friday was parent-teacher conference day at school. Mom was busy with work, so no one would be attending as usual. Like all the other times, I sat at my desk holding my own conference. Well-dressed parents filed in, wearing politely cordial smiles. Occasionally, someone would glance at me with curiosity, but no one probed further. I envy the sense of dignity some adults have. They never ask more than they should, unlike young people, who throw their blunt hostility wide open, cutting deep. Before the parent-teacher meeting started, I kept my head down, finishing up my homework. If I could get most of it done at school, I'd have time to work at the nearby restaurant after school. I was working on some math problems when someone yanked my pen out of my hand and tossed it on the floor. The familiarity of the situation made me shiver. I looked up to see Lucy standing there, full of herself, talking to the middle-aged man by her side. "Dad, it's her. She ruined my skirt last time. It got so dirty." It wasn't that expensive, just a few $1,000s, but I loved it. Lucy looked down at me with a smug smile. I wondered, would I be expelled? As I hesitated, my fingertips started to go numb. Lucy's father, Stephen, looked at me dismissively, his gaze lingering on my face before suddenly changing expression. He left her there and went out to make a phone call. Lucy was stunned and stomped her foot in frustration. "Dad, what's so urgent?" Seeing I had no reaction, she frowned, standing at my desk with anger. "Just wait. My dad will deal with you when he gets back." I shrugged, picked up my pen, and continued. What could Lucy do? I had no one to rely on, so there wasn't much point in fighting back. I instinctively glanced at my phone, thinking of Johnny. His number was still there, but he hadn't texted me in ages. It would only annoy him if I tried to reach out now. When Stephen came back, he didn't scold me. Instead, he sounded friendly. "It's just a skirt. Getting along is what matters between classmates." Lucy looked baffled. "Dad, aren't you going to stand up for me?" "Fine, you leave now. The meeting's about to start." Stephen sent Lucy off with a stern tone, then turned to me with a kind smile. "Young lady, what's your name?" Startled, I gave him my name. To my surprise, Stephen's smile turned almost apologetic. "Jenny, feel free to visit our house. Lucy just doesn't know better." Then, he paused, giving me a complicated look. "Your eyes, I can't see." Stephen relaxed a bit, chatted briefly, and then went to sit in the back row. I noticed his attitude shift from being eager and flattering to cold, just like that. Why was that? I touched my eyes, filled with questions. My mom's stern warning rang in my ears again. "Jenny, don't let anyone know your eyes healed. You must pretend to be blind, all right?" Why such secrecy about my eyes? Midway through the meeting, Stephen politely excused himself to answer a phone call as he went out the back. Curious, I followed him out. In a quiet corner, Stephen was speaking softly on the phone. "Makes sense." His words were choppy, and a sense of unease crept over me. I stepped closer to hear better. Stephen's next sentence left me rooted to the spot. "Yes, my daughter and Johnny are getting engaged next month. We'd love for you to come." I felt as if I'd been struck by lightning, ice cold all over. Lucy and Johnny were getting engaged. I barely remember how I stumbled back to the classroom to finish the meeting. When the meeting ended, I saw Johnny again. He hadn't been attending school lately, and I'd only heard bits and pieces about him. This was fate's cruel joke. When we finally met again, it was now. "You're getting engaged to Lucy, is that right?" I heard my voice shake. Anyone else would have been fine. Anyone, but why Lucy, of all people? The one who's hurt me the most. There was so much I wanted to ask, but I knew I had no right. Johnny stayed silent for so long that I thought he wouldn't answer. But then he sighed and said, "Jenny, live the life you want. I can't be with you." The day Johnny and Lucy got engaged, it was a big deal. The media even covered it. The wedding venue was so fancy it was breathtaking. I moved alone through the crowd, making small talk. Everyone was happy, except me. The place was huge, with a small garden. I walked until my legs ached. Exhausted, I stopped to sit down, but after a bit, I felt I couldn't keep walking. Why is it so hard to find a simple path? I looked for shelter, and I found Johnny. I thought I reached the life I wanted, to live like a normal person, but going around in circles, Johnny ended up engaged to Lucy. Turns out, no one's ever been on my side. From the start, I was just a pastime in their love story, a toy for their boredom. Hearing voices nearby, I wiped my face quickly, realizing I'd been crying. As footsteps approached, I was about to hide, but froze when I heard Johnny's name. Everything set. Make sure the Jones family doesn't suspect a thing. Relax, nothing will go wrong. Just watch it unfold. That old fool's nuts, giving Johnny shares, just for this marriage alliance. That kid's getting all the good stuff. Marriage alliance, shares. The words flashed through my mind, but I didn't have time to think further. What were they planning for Johnny? They were rounding the corner, so I ran, crouching low, until I was far enough not to be heard. And then I sprinted. Johnny was in danger. I had to tell him everything I heard. But back at the main hall, my resolve wavered. From just those words, I had no idea how they might have set him up. Without any evidence, no one would believe me. Lucy and Johnny were in a private room. Finding him meant facing her. She'd never believe me. While I was hesitating, the engagement ceremony began. With the melodious music playing, Lucy smiled as she walked arm in arm with Johnny. The crowd started clapping non-stop. Lucy glanced at me, her brows furrowed for a second, but she said nothing. She just raised her chin with pride. It was her big day after all, and I guess she didn't want to waste her time on me. But I couldn't just let this engagement ceremony continue. Before I turned 7, my world was always dark, so my hearing became extra sharp. Amidst the thunderous claps, I caught a familiar voice, exactly the same one I heard at the corner earlier. He said, "Make a move." I froze, pushed through the crowd, dashed onto the stage, and yelled, "Stop, there's danger." Lucy screamed right then, "Jenny, what are you doing? Even if we have our disagreements, you don't have to ruin my engagement to get back at me." I said nothing, quickly scanning everyone's faces in the crowd. Shocked, confused expressions stared back at me. I couldn't find him. There were just too many people. I heard the voice but couldn't match it to a face. Johnny let go of Lucy's hand and took a couple of steps towards me. "Jenny, what's wrong?" Before I could answer, I heard a faint noise above, like something breaking. I looked up sharply and saw the massive chandelier on the ceiling sway and then start to fall. Johnny was standing right under it. In that moment, I heard nothing else but my own rushing to where he was. One step, that's all I needed. I almost touched his shirt, but I was too late. I watched as he fell, shocked, into a pool of blood. Lucy cried and ran over, scratching my face with sharp nails. "You witch! Why did you come? Why did you do this to Johnny?" I had nothing to say, just stared blankly at Johnny, unable to offer any explanation. I couldn't save him. Today was supposed to be his engagement party, a joyous event, but now he was just lying there, motionless, in a pool of blood. All the sounds around me seemed distant, struggling to catch my attention, until someone dragged me up, and that familiar voice echoed again. "Miss Jenny, I'd heard you had eye problems, but now, it seems not." Chills ran down my spine. I turned around to see a face that looked strikingly similar to Johnny's. When I woke up, I was lying on a bed, sitting up in a daze. I remembered being taken from the engagement scene by the person who planned to harm Johnny. I had fainted from the emotional shock. But where was I? This place was elegantly furnished, unfamiliar yet oddly familiar. Could it be that man's house? He looked so similar to Johnny. He was probably from the Jones family too. I got off the bed, opened the door and walked out. In the living room stood a tall middle-aged man. I grabbed a glass next to me for defense, but stopped in my tracks at the sound of his voice. He said, "Jenny, long time no see." The voice I had buried deep in the years gone by rushed back, pulling every memory into focus. Harry, my biological father. I had never seen his face, but his voice was unmistakable to me. In my childhood memories, he was always gentle and kind, treating me well until he was caught cheating on my mom when I was 5. My mom was devastated, divorced him, and took me away. She was depressed for a whole year. Back then, I couldn't understand how my perfect family shattered so suddenly. I didn't get it, and I didn't dare mention Harry's name in front of Mom. Over time, I buried memories before the age of 5 deep down and rarely recalled them. Turns out this house was the one I lived in for 5 years. For over a decade, Harry had never visited us or paid any child support. Even though I might have once loved my dad, seeing Harry now stirred little emotion in me. "Why bring me here? What do you want?" I asked coldly, skipping over the disappointment on Harry's face. Harry didn't answer. "Jenny, Eric mentioned you got your eyesight back." Eric must be the one who tried to harm Johnny. Judging by his age, he's probably his uncle. I noted this down, planning to warn Johnny to be careful later. Harry sighed, glancing over my injuries, Why follow your mom back then and end up like this? Who dared to hurt you? That Lucy couldn't hold a candle to you. I don't need your concern. If nothing else, I'm leaving. I cut him off. I was young when I left Harry, not knowing who he really was. Now I realized he was from the Jones family. Their wealth indeed surpassed both Lucy and Johnny's families combined. But that's none of my business. Mom doesn't know I'm here. She'll be worried if she doesn't see me after work. I need to go home. You can't leave. Someone will be watching you for the next few days, he said. What do you mean? I glared at Harry. Dad made this decision for your own good. Soon the Jones family will hold a banquet for you. Everyone will know you're a member of the Jones family, and no one will ever dare bully you again. Harry smirked, like he expected my gratitude, but I just gave a cold laugh. For my own good. You didn't show up when I was blind, and now that I can see again, you're in a rush to bring me back to the family. Is it really for my benefit? Or just to ship me off into an arranged marriage? All you see in me is what can be squeezed out for value. Harry's face fell when I hit the nerve, and he said, stop being ungrateful. Do you know how many people want into this family but can't? Think about it yourself. With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Harry kept a strict watch on me, and my few attempts to escape failed. I had no choice but to wait for the party to start. I put on a custom-made gown that fit me perfectly. Each accessory on me was worth a fortune, enough to cover more than a decade of living expenses. I never had any of this, but now that I do, I realize it means nothing. It's worthless compared to freedom. Through the crowd, I spotted Lucy. She looked furious, but didn't even have a chance to talk to me. I deliberately headed to the bathroom, and sure enough, Lucy followed. She looked at me, with pity and more resignation in her eyes. Johnny's injuries aren't even healed yet, but has been searching all over the city for you. Hasn't slept for days. Looking for you has nearly driven him mad. He won't go through with our engagement. Jenny, you win. Hearing Johnny's name caught me off guard for a moment. Then it just seemed funny. Now, Lucy and I had completely swapped positions. The gap between us was so wide that she didn't even dare to compete with me. But I didn't want it anymore. From the moment I knew Johnny and Lucy got engaged, I stopped yearning for anyone's love. I'll still warn him to be cautious if Eric tries anything against Johnny, but I won't expect comfort or help from him anymore. Johnny used to be my salvation. I thought he could pull me out of the abyss, but now I see only I can save myself. Instead of struggling in the mud for a measly bit of love, I'd rather save myself. The love I can't get, I'll give to myself. So, I said to Lucy, let's make a deal. Wearing Lucy's gown and covering my face, I slipped out of the venue and took a cab straight home. Not far from home, I saw my mom, hair in disarray, red-eyed, asking passers-by if they'd seen me. My eyes welled up as I hugged her. Mom, I'm here, I'm back. No time for chit-chat. I urged my mom to pack up and leave with me. We quickly packed our bags and headed to the station. Before the party, Harry had given me money to pick out some accessories. He wasn't stingy with money, and this cash was enough for Mom and me to start anew in another city. We'd have a brand new life there, away from everything and everyone that ever caused us pain. I changed out of the long gown, took off the excessive accessories, and put on my shirt again. With the wind brushing our faces, a sense of unprecedented freedom filled my heart. I hadn't seen my mom smile that happily in a long time, like she was a carefree 18-year-old again. Walking into the station, I immediately spotted Johnny, still in his hospital gown, with a scruffy beard, looking worried and regretful. Lucy must have told him. The condition I gave Lucy was that I wouldn't be with Johnny, and Lucy tipped him off that I'd be here, probably hoping I'd convince him to give up on me completely. Seeing me, Johnny walked over quickly, his eyes red. I spoke first. It's Eric who's plotting against you. Be careful in the future. Johnny's eyes lit up. Jenny, you still care about me, don't you? I was wrong. I shouldn't have gotten engaged to Lucy. I resisted, but only by marrying into the Lu family could I get the shares. Jenny, will you give me another chance? Sorry, I shouldn't have made you wait. I interrupted him. Johnny, there's always something more important to you than me, like shares, like marriage alliances. But I don't want to wait anymore. I'm a person, not a backup plan. Johnny looked at me pleadingly. Jenny, but my feelings for you were never fake, and I won't make you wait again. Can we go back to how things were? But I smiled, relieved. I just don't need you anymore. Now, I'm going to live the life I want. He stood frozen, unable to say a word. The train slowly chugged toward freedom. I suddenly thought of a song lyric. I love you more than I love myself. But now, every day, I have to learn to love myself more. From now on, I love myself more than I love you.